Hello Janesville, and welcome back to Park Place Views, the monthly program that aims to keep residents informed by highlighting the people, places, and partners of the City of Janesville. As always, this program is brought to you by the City of Janesville and JATV Media Services. I'm your host Nick Faust, and I'm the assistant to the City Manager in the City Manager's office. Now, in last month's episode, funny enough, we sat down with City Manager Kevin Lehner, and as Kevin settles into his role at the helm of City Hall, it was fantastic to sit down and hear about his first few months on the job and his vision for our community moving forward. If you're interested in watching that episode or any past show, they're all available to watch on the city's website or JATV's YouTube page. Now, today, I'm looking forward to being joined by Jackie Wood, Sue Ellen Madere, and Paulette Melvin of the Carrie Jacobs Bond Questers as we prepare to celebrate the birthday of one of Janesville's most famous native daughters. I'm excited to have the Questers join me to talk about the famous Gallant Lady of Song. Thanks for joining us today, folks. Now, before we get started, I kind of just wanted to maybe go around the circle here and give you guys the chance to tell our viewers a bit more about yourself. Paulette?
Oh, I'm a retired elementary teacher with reading certification. I retired in 1995, but I'm a Carrie Jacobs Bond long-time member.
Wow. And a charter member, I've heard.
Yes.
That's wonderful to hear. Thanks for joining us today.
Sue Ellen Madere. I was a librarian, but I was married to a city manager, so although I was born in Janesville and lived here until I was married, I have lived east of Highway 1 and west of Highway 101 and many places in between before his retirement, which I insisted would be in Janesville.
Yes, well-traveled as city managers and their families tend to be. And then last but not least, Ms.
Well, I am Jackie Wood, and I'm still part owner of the Old Town Mall. And I think I'm here today because I'm crazy about history, and I always have been. The Old Town Mall is the oldest downtown J.M. Bostwick department store. And now we have the opportunity to honor Carrie Jacobs Bond, and I think it's very important that we educate ourselves with the history because it honors the people that were here before us, and I think that's important.
That is so tremendously important. And one thing I, being not from Janesville, but I have come to really appreciate about our community is we do have a wonderful set of folks like yourselves who focus on preservation and education and keep those stories alive, because we can still learn so much from our past. And I think as we'll get in and learn today, some of that stuff is still incredibly timely. And for folks maybe at home who don't know really what a quester is or what is the Questers, since we have a charter member, Paulette, how did the Carrie Jacobs Bond chapter come to form, and what is Questers International?
Okay. Questers started in Pennsylvania in the 1940s. A woman invited friends to her home to talk about their antique collections. So that was so popular that it spread throughout the United States. And in 1965, I was invited to Ann Loper's home. She was an Iowa person who had belonged to Questers, and we started the first Questers group in Wisconsin. The minute the news came out in the Gazette, within a month, more Quester groups started because people were interested in antiques and so on. Questers in Wisconsin have, and probably across the United States, have expanded from just antique collections to preservation and restoration and support it. And we support historical societies. And we have conventions someplace in the United States once a year where we can learn about all other histories of states. Now, it started here in Janesville in Wisconsin in September of 1965. Now, are you interested in how we named our group Carrie Jacobs Bond?
Certainly.
Okay. Since I'm a teacher, long-term teacher, I knew about the third grade curriculum in Janesville at the time. They studied all kinds of famous Janesville people, and they even had field trips going to these places. So as a quester, I suggested we should take the name of one of those famous people. And because I knew about Carrie Jacobs Bond, we did name our group Carrie Jacobs Bond. Most of the groups have some historical type name, person or place. And the interesting thing is I've been able to go to conventions all over the United States, and I've seen some wonderful things. And they take you to their historical places and so on. And I think I've gone more than 10 times. And one of the best things I was able to see is Frank Lloyd Wright buildings all over the United States. And I finally got to Falling Water.
Yeah.
Okay. So there were 16 Quester groups in Wisconsin. We're diminishing in numbers now. And our group has supported a lot of historical preservation and restoration projects around the area. Milton Historical Society, Rock County Historical Society, Clinton, Beckman Mill, and we had supported other groups. I can tell you that if you're a Quester, sometimes you end up as being an antique dealer because you know stuff.
Yes.
So that has happened to some of us. Okay, in our conventions we have met friends from other states, and we've been able to see historical places that we wouldn't have been able to see just traveling, because they take you to their favorite places and so on. I think that's probably basically how Wisconsin Quester started and why we're called Carrie Jacobs Bond. There was another group in town that was called Henry Janes. There's another group called Monterey.
And Blackhawk.
And Blackhawk.
Wow.
So they chose names of that sort. I think that's probably a good summary.
Yeah, and that's very interesting to me because, well, I thank you for that first person perspective as a charter member. That's incredible to hear. But it's this international group that brings together, though, these community, sort of natural community organizations that can then share stories from their own hometowns or their own communities in preservation, which is just a really interesting kind of framework and a very cool approach. And that's a kind of a rich history to maintain and uphold and be the stewards of. So that's certainly, admirable. And your namesake, Carrie Jacobs Bond, is truly a monumental figure in American music history. But her story, of course, begins right here in Janesville. So I suppose I'd ask, where was Carrie herself born, and what was her childhood like? I understand Sue Ellen also has some postcards that we'll show our viewers.
This is a postcard of her birthplace, which is over on I think it was Court Street.
West Court.
There's a boulder that shows a plaque naming that this is her birthplace, but it's now in Bond Park because this house no longer exists. And then later on in her life, after her second husband died, she returned to Janesville, and this is the house she was living at. Wisconsin and Milwaukee. There's another boulder with another plaque commemorating that this is the place she was living when she wrote some of her famous songs. So, and these, neither house exists now, although the plaques are still available to view.
Well, I remember reading that she more or less was a prodigy as well, because she could play music by ear and started as early as 4. And her family did promote her musical talent because they did buy her a piano. But where she went to school and places like that, I never found. But she did grow up here because she married at 18 here. Her father died when she was young. So I think that kind of started maybe some of the more, not tragic, but a little more, I guess, troublesome times of her life. She was born in her grandparents' home. The house on West Court was her grandparents. So that, I guess, kind of gives a little view of what it was like for her.
Yeah. So And you hear about that, and I don't know if there's a good word for it, but she had that ear that was able to kind of listen and then just totally transcribe music. It's prodigal, it is. And so in addition to a tremendous talent at playing piano, I also understand that she had dreams of songwriting, and her family promoted her to explore those talents. After graduating from school, though, you mentioned she was married quite young, and she spent time as a homemaker with a first husband. Had a divorce and then remarried. What was her period in life like when she was a homemaker and maybe having her only son?
Well, I remember where she lived. Or not, I don't remember, but I came across this. If you picture the building on the corner of Main and Milwaukee, it's the Frendahl building. And it had apartments upstairs. It was always retail on the first floor. But she actually lived up there in an apartment with her first husband. And they had the son, Frederick, and they were married, I think, for at least 7 or so years. But it was not a happy marriage, and he wasn't really that nice to her, so it did end in divorce. But there was something where her first love, Mr. Bond, he went away to medical school, and at that point, and he didn't let her know that he was that interested. So that's why she just thought, well, I'm here in Janesville, and the man that she did marry at 18 was available, and that's what started her out. She did become kind of an artist at that point, too. And she always painted china, so she did that sort of as a homemaker.
That's fascinating. So, this young talent perhaps found herself. I mean, if we think about the constructs of marriage at that time, it was probably incredibly difficult for her as a young woman to go through those tribulations, have a divorce. But then on the other end of it, a childhood sweetheart of sorts who maybe they had a chance at love again, and they were able to kind of reunite. So after that, she marries Frank Lewis Bond?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, they met again.
And then they took up in Upper Michigan because he was a doctor to the miners or something like that. Is that correct?
Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But fell on the ice and sustained a injury that killed him. So she was a widow, and she was still pretty young.
Yeah.
But with a son to support.
A widow with a child. And again, if you think about that time, and I mean, that's what a difficult sort of prospect, because I understand that's dire financial straits that I assume she was in after her second husband had died.
She was. And then she came back here. And I believe that's when she did move to this smaller house with the plaque. And that is where she wrote, "I love you truly." And it was sort of in memory of her husband, too.
And that song, Jackie, was still being sung at weddings when people my age were getting married.
Yeah, they still are, yeah.
And it was a time when that sort of parlor music and sheet music was really kind of the name of the game, right, for publishing?
Absolutely. It wasn't downloads or jukebox plays.
Yes.
It wasn't even CDs or, top 40. It was how many sheets of sheet music did you sell? Yes.
Wow. Wow, and so when she moved back to our region, and we saw the photo a little earlier, that house, she eventually moved closer to Chicago, right, to be by the big publishers of the day. I mean, I was struck in reading up on her that's a big risk for a widowed mother, to take the opportunity to move to the big city and attempt, as I understand, to get that music picked up by the publishers of that day.
Which is why she became a music publisher in her own right, right, Jackie?
Yes.
This is the monumental businesswoman's contribution to our history.
It is, and she struggled there at first as well because she took in boarders. She had to sell furniture to make ends meet, and she did have her china painting. But the men that were dominating that industry in that day were not going to publish her stuff. So she, on her own, started her own company and published her own stuff. And she ended up, after creating 400 songs, publishing 170, she ended up to own every single note and word that she wrote, which today, as you know, it sort of can be kitty by the door. But because of her own publishing, and along the way then, people did realize her talent.
Yeah, it's almost this, you think of, she had to hoe this tough road of self-publishing, but on the back end, once her talent was truly appreciated, I mean, you think about that even in today's context. If you own your own masters, if you own the lyrics and the song or the sheet music to your tunes, that's boomtown. And so she kind of came to that, but only because she was breaking through this male-domineered field.
She also painted the covers of her music, which are very beautiful.
I could show you one.
Yes, I understand we've brought along.
Yes. This is a framed copy of A Perfect Day, and you see the decoration up here is wild roses. That was a theme she was painting on much of the china, I believe.
Yes.
But also on much of her sheet music. And her first publication of 7 songs or something like that, it was Modest as a Wild Rose or something like that as a subtitle. And you can see right here that it says, published by the Bond Shop, Carrie Jacobs Bond and Son, South Michigan Avenue, Chicago.
Wow. So she would have painted the covers to her.
Yeah, she did that too. She was a good watercolor artist.
This is dated 1909. This
and this was her most successful song, I believe.
Well, I thought I Love You Truly was the most.
Well, that certainly was very popular as well. So.
But then A Perfect Day was sung a lot during the war, and she went overseas during World War I and sang A Perfect Day to the troops.
Oh my goodness.
But The Perfect Day, I Love You Truly, and the third one, were the ones that all sold 1 million copies, which was a first in the day as well.
Yeah, and so when we look at something like this is a great encapsulation of the Questers' mission, and perhaps, Paulette, this is what you folks started to do, which was to save and restore some of these original pieces that are just of tremendous historic value.
Yes. Well, this belongs to Peggy Hirschberg, but I have custody of it because I'm currently the president of the chapter.
Yes. Yeah.
But the songs were extremely sentimental. They were heart songs, simple and lyrical, which today obviously would not be popular, but in that day they were.
Yes.
They really were. And she was good at it.
It's that, and I think in reading, she struck that sentimentalism that was popular in that day, and really struck home with simple yet poetic lyrics that were accessible to everyone, and could kind of, even today when you listen to her, you watch It's a Wonderful Life and you hear the tune, it rings true. You can relate to it because it is simplistic yet poetic and evocative of an emotion.
Well, that's music, isn't it, Nick?
It is.
Lights up your brain and it touches your heart.
Right.
And if it lights up enough and touches enough, it's very popular, and obviously the styles change, but music just is the way our brain gets to the emotional part. So I think she was good at plucking the strings.
Nick, did you read her biography at the Janesville Library?
I understand that it is available, and I do think I have some homework to do, because I understand she's got a memoir. She authored a memoir. And I think,
and that's there.
Yes, I think they're all very well available here, and encourage folks to go to hedbergpubliclibrary.org, where they can take a full look at the catalog of history that we have. And from what I have read, Carrie and her son Frederick moved west as the years went by. Carrie had rheumatism and some illness, weather being a little nicer out there, but she continued to write music, I think, into her early 80s. I believe she died at 84. I find that her story has these undertones, right, of independence. She owned her music by force. She had to work hard and self-publish, and she continued to overcome struggles throughout her life. I wonder if in your studies of her you find any place where Carrie drew this strength, this personal strength from.
Well, I'm not sure how old she was, but when her son committed suicide, he was not very old. And for a parent to face something like that, I hope I never find out the depth of that emotion, because life is not fair.
No.
So both of them were buried in California, Carrie and her son.
Yeah.
She was 32 when she started on her journey after the Mr. Bond had died. So she was in her 30s going through all this, so she had a little bit more maturity, I would say. And she had great and loyal friends that really did help her along. It just seemed like little things happened. She was given, when she had the 7 songs that she presented to a friend, that friend gave her $250 to have them published so that she could start out and get some money. So that helped her out. Along the way, she did have some help, but she did overcome a lot of strife as well. She really did.
Yeah, and I mean, she performed, far and wide. She achieved success. You mentioned she played for our troops in the First World War in Europe. She performed for presidents, state dinners, and her success was really a testament to overcoming the early death of her father, her second husband, her only son's tragic suicide, which, as we've discussed, was kind of this one big final tragedy that she had to kind of persevere through. What does that legacy of resilience, I mean, can we apply that today? I mean, because part of history, this beautiful history, is learning lessons from these trailblazing people that came before us. And so I wonder, what does this legacy of resilience mean today?
Well, she was a very, very strong woman, and she received awards for that, for being the trailblazer that she was. But maybe, I don't know, maybe having some early things like her father dying young would have just maybe given her more strength, or but she certainly did have
the word
a lot.
you use, prodigal.
Yes.
That has to come in here.
A prodigy.
Well, and she had, as we talked about, she had folks and a support network in her life who recognized that prodigal nature and helped her uplift herself out of the hardships of poverty. But it was that early support, I think, that I also pick up on in her life, is she did have folks who helped her and allowed her to kind of achieve her potential.
There are videos of her actually playing and singing. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yes, I've seen a video of her playing When You Come to the End of a Perfect Day. So that might be here in the library.
Yes, yeah, we will certainly, and as a part of this program, link through to some resources that our very fine HPL has, as well as other internet archives that we might have for folks to take a look at. And this might be tough, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask each of you if you have a particular favorite song of Carrie's that you like to play.
I like The Perfect Day.
Yes.
And the one I've heard the most is probably I Love You Truly.
Yes.
And the other one I couldn't think of earlier was just a Wearying for You. That was also very popular.
And that's been re-recorded as well by some of the larger artists of the 40s and 50s, I think, if I'm remembering from my internet research. But certainly no shortage of good songs. And again, as a part of the program, we will be sure to link through so that folks can enjoy Carrie some more.
somebody did mention that if you compared it to today, she would be as popular as the Beatles and Taylor Swift.
Right. Oh, yes. If you
That was-
extrapolated those metrics of selling, you know, 1 million. I think I saw that
And
A
the
Perfect Day
popularity,
hit 5
yeah.
million copies of sheet
Yeah.
music, which extrapolated today would be like the blockbusters we know, you know, the chart toppers. And so now as Questers, you help carry this legacy on. What sort of preservation and restoration activities do you all perform, being that this sort of outreach is an activity itself?
Well, the one that there's a history of them that we've done, but the most interesting one recently is our group went to Clinton, and they have a little, what do you call it? Cobblestone house, and a whole group has, you cannot believe what they've done to preserve that little cobblestone house. There's another cobblestone house in near the campus in Beloit, if you want to see a cobblestone house. But that one impressed me right away. And we've done so many things for the Milton Historical Society. And the one I remember that was nice, there was an old hand-drawn map of Milton by, help me out, Sue.
The Goodriches?
Yeah. And so they found that in the archives. So it was professionally mounted and framed, and we were responsible for helping with that map.
Well, that's the other aspect of it, too. Part of our fundraising is for scholarships and fellowships for the people that do this restoration work.
Yes.
For a
National.
master's degree at Columbia and
Wow.
the, what is it, Winterthur in Delaware at Brandywine. They are teaching people how to do these things because right now our former president, Nancy Ziegler, is in Iowa learning how to make leather doll shoes because she's a great doll collector.
Yeah.
And someone there who knows how to do it is willing to share this knowledge. So my own grandmother restored Carrie Jacobs Bond chest of drawers because her mother, my great-grandmother, had bought it at auction when Carrie was selling up to go to Chicago. So that was my grandmother's treasured possession, and she left it to me, specifically named in her will.
Yes.
Little did she know I would become a quester obsessed with restoration and preservation.
And that chest of drawers is on display?
It's in my house, holding my sweaters and
Yes, but preserved.
Yes.
Nonetheless. Wonderful. Well, and now on the 11th of this month, August, the council will, for the second year, declare it Carrie Jacobs Bond Day to commemorate her birthday. And I, of course, am here to present the resolution to you folks and thank you folks for getting this on to our council's agenda and elevating its presence in our community. What was the genesis for getting this effort to bear for us and getting a Carrie Jacobs Bond Day officially on the books?
well, that would be Jackie.
It might have been the day I turned on WCLO and a woman's voice said, nobody in Janesville knows who Carrie Jacobs Bond is. And I thought she was born here. That plaque that's where she wrote, I love you truly. There should be some people that have some recognition of her, but obviously not. And as time goes on and people are younger, things like that do get lost.
Right.
So I knew of the Carrie Jacobs Bond Quester group, and I thought, well, that sounds like a nice fit. And they were just really wonderful. I think they were just as excited that their namesake would be creating a day for Carrie Jacobs Bond, and it is her birthday.
Yes.
In 1842, and then she died in 1946. But it really has been a joy to do.
Yeah. Yeah, what a tremendous, tremendous opportunity it's been for the city, and we can play a small part in uplifting this tale of this incredible native to our community because of the work you folks have done and the Questers have done to maintain it. So that is just, because it would be a shame to lose that story and to not give it the reverence it deserves. So I am so happy that we can do that. And if any of our viewers are interested, how can the community learn more about Carrie Jacobs Bond, perhaps checking out a book here at the HPL or your Questers chapter?
Well, Questers International has a website. Just Google Questers. You don't even have to put the international part. And you get linked to all the different states that have Quester chapters, including many in Wisconsin.
There were 16 chapters, but older people are giving up. But
Yeah.
a very important one was a Quester group in Lake Geneva. Got the cottage.
Black Point?
Yes.
Black Point.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of work for Black Point.
Our Quester friends got a Black Point registered.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So all over Wisconsin, there are different sites that have been restored, and because of Questers.
Yeah. So tremendous work that continues to this day, and if anything, with kind of as folks age and stuff, it underscores the importance of maintaining interest and maintaining robust efforts in preservation and restoration. So certainly we'll link to the Questers International website as a part of this program and encourage everybody to read up on Carrie and celebrate a rich part of our history. So I want to thank you for stopping by the program. Our community is tremendously fortunate to have a group like the Questers, preserving and uplifting our history. Carrie Jacobs Bond had such an incredible story, and your efforts to keep her legacy living are so enriching to the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick. You're doing your part.
Ah, wonderful. I appreciate the opportunity to.
You knew a lot.
I got to come prepared. I'm talking to the experts, Well, wonderful. I want to thank you and thank our viewers and residents for tuning in today and for all you do to help make Janesville a community of choice to realize life's opportunities. I invite you to stay connected with the city by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, signing up for emergency notifications from the JPD via the Nixle app, and registering to receive our weekly press releases by visiting www.janesvillewi.gov/email lists. For Park Place Views in the City of Janesville, I'm Nick Faust. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next month.